Hi, and welcome to ABC Homestead. My name is Kelly, and I live on about half an acre in a city in central New York. So no, I don't live on a homestead just yet, but I do believe in practicing as much self-reliance as possible, as well as cooking whole, real food for overall better health. Today, I am going to be starting some onions and celery seeds, as well as making some homemade dog food, and finally finishing a project that I started a couple months ago, and that is a Comfrey balm. So let's jump right in. I've got water boiling on the stove here, and that is so that I can saturate my seed starting mix. I want to kill any possible fungus gnat eggs that are in there. I've been seed starting for 5 years now, and last year I didn't boil water and boil the medium, and I got overrun by fungus gnats last year. So I am definitely taking the time to do that step. I've already done 2 pans, and I'm going to do 1 more. I like to start seeds in, believe it or not, these trays. Not all of my seeds, but definitely onions. They are going to live in here for quite a while. I don't have to up pot them. That's why I'm going to be putting in some worm castings. And they're really easy to just pull out and tease the roots apart to plant when it's time to go in. So they can live in here for a long time. And I'm going to be starting a lot of them. So I can pack a lot more in here than I could in, this size of an individual cell tray. So what I do is, this is 2 pans. And on the bottom of 1 pan, I'm just going to make some holes, quite a few. And that's for drainage. And then this one will just sit inside of here, okay? And this is deep enough. I have not had any problems doing onions this way at all. So I am going to get my medium in here, and then I'm just going to add the hot water, and I'm going to let it sit inside of here for a while so that any eggs that are in there do stay in the boiling water for just a little bit while I fluff back up and get ready the other trays. The seed starting mix that I am using today, it is what I have left over from last year. It's a Coast of Maine blend. I really like this one. So I am just going to fill it almost full in here. And yes, this is in my kitchen, and I will clean up any mess that I make. I don't have a greenhouse, and it is too cold to do this outside. I mentioned I live in upstate New York. We are in zone 6A now. That's an improvement from 5B last year. But it is probably in the high 30s today, so we are doing this inside. And I also have Coast of Maine worm castings. I really do like the Coast of Maine products. So I'm going to cut this open and add some in. I don't need a ton of this. This is a slow release fertilizer. That is plenty. And I'm just now going to carefully mix this in. Again, I'm not trying to make a big mess all over my cutting board work surface, but if I do, I'll just wash it. Okay, that looks good. Now this, as I mentioned, this was just boiling. I just turned it off. So I am going to just make sure that this is fully saturated with the hot water. I don't even mind if there's standing water in there. We're just going to let it sit for about 5 minutes. Okay, that looks really good. I'm going to let this sit, like I said, and then I'll take it over to the sink, and then I will let it drain out and let it cool down before I plant in here. But I do have 2 trays that are ready to go. So I'm going to move over into my sunroom where I can work. Okay, I've got my 3 trays. This is the hot one. It still has some steam coming off of it. So we're not going to put anything into that one just yet, but we're going to get set up. So this year I purchased a subscription to Seed Time. So Seed Time is telling me exactly how many of what seeds I need to plant based on the layout of my garden. Again, I'm only on half an acre, but I pack it pretty well. I have, I don't know, 24 beds. They're not all ideal size. They fit where they go. I also have containers. I have 4 green stalks. I use buckets and I use grow bags if I need a little bit of extra room. So for onions here, I keep my onions in those photo boxes. I'm going to start off by making labels for the ones that I'm growing. And I don't know if I'm growing every single one because we do have quite a bit. Sorry, this is alphabetized. Okay, here we go. All right, so we're definitely growing the Alyssa Craig. Let me get some of my labels here. So I'm just going to write onion, A-L-I-S-A, Craig. And I am just going to stick that where I'm going to be putting those onions. So I'll make a row just like this, right? And I'll know exactly where those onions go. I'm really loving the Seed Time app. I printed off, well, first I inputted all of my seeds, which that took a really long time. But now that they're all in there, I was able to print. I went to the end of the season and I was able to print off all the tasks for the entire season. And that way I could make sure, did I plant everything that I wanted to plant? Is it accounted for? Because it won't have a planting spot next to it on my seed list if there's no task to plant it because it's not in my layout. So I am really excited about this. And it also tells me exactly how many I need to start, which is great. Okay, so let's see. We've got the Alyssa. Well, this is. All right, let's get started. Now for the Globo, this one was not a lot, 7. Now I'm not just going to plant 7 seeds because the germination may not be 100%. So I'm just going to do a little pinch, give them a little bit of space, make sure this is fluffed up nicely because I want to be able to stick them down in there. So I'm just dropping them behind the tag. And then I'm just going to make sure that they're in there just by kind of mixing and tamping down a little bit. And that one's done. All right, yellow sweet Spanish. Yeah, that's only 8, so about the same. I'm gonna do a little bit of a bigger handful of these. All right, now I'm just gonna take some from the middle here because I didn't plant anything there and just kind of cover them up softly, tamp that in. All right, so I know I have some defined space there. The Stuttgarter, I'm gonna do about 12 of those onions. Okay, that's those. The Alyssa Craig. This one is a new one. About 12 of those. Now, and if I didn't have the extra space here in the middle to pull some soil to tamp those in, I would just spread a little bit, tiny little bit of soil on the top when I was done. All right, Weathersford red goes here. And Weathersford red, that's about 23 or so. Okay. Florence, not a new packet here, but how many did I? 26. So these are an onion that I've grown before, so that's probably why I wanted more of these. I know how they'll turn out. I'm just dropping them onto the soil. You know, they're small, they're like poppy seed size. And I know I didn't plant anything between these two back here, so I'm just going to pull some of this and just get them covered up. And that tray is done. Now all I'm going to have to do is water them in, but I'll do that later. I'll just take a squirt bottle of water and just make sure that the top of the soil is really wet so that the seeds come in contact with moisture. All right, white sweet Spanish. I think we had a lot of these. Yeah, we had like 68. So I'm just going to do a full row of these. I'm going to take some of the soil so I can grab it after to cover them up. So big pinch, and I'm just going to go down the well, the little well I just made, and just kind of sprinkle them all over. And take the dirt I just moved and plop it back on, or sprinkle it back on top. There we go, that's one. And then yellow of Parma goes in the middle, again, something I've grown before. Yep, about the same, 30 seeds or so. Let me just move some dirt around, make a little well for them. Okay, that was yellow of Parma. There we go. Thought I lost some of the seeds. Okay, and then Southport Globe Red. I'm going to do about 20-ish of those as well. And I'm just sprinkling them all over. And now I'm just going to mix them in. And then we'll get them watered in. All right, let's see. Oh, let's see. Yep, this is definitely cool enough. Okay, so I know I'm not planting a ton of bunching onions, so I am just gonna give them their own row here. That was Sakura. I have Tokyo long bunching. That one's on the last one. This is probably more than we need in here too. I can't help myself. I just like things to grow. I'm trying to behave this year. I am actually trying to start most things outside if they can be started outside, because it gets a little ridiculous in here. I purchased, I think I started with one of those 4 feet wide, 6 or 7 tier tall metal racks at our wholesale club the first year. And now I have 5 of those, and I've repurposed them when I redid my pantry. And I'm trying really hard not to go out and buy more because I shouldn't need them. I can grow a lot of things outside. 1 grow rack should be plenty. So I'm trying really hard to stick to that. Okay. I do need to put some soil on top of this because it is still pretty wet and I didn't have enough to cover the seeds with. So on the tray that has the bunching onions and the shallots, I will just add some soil on top. And I pulled way too many of those out, but that's okay. Okay, my hands are dirty. My onions are planted. It is getting towards the end of February. Spring is just around the corner. It's 3 weeks away. So I'm super glad that I finally got the opportunity to start these seeds. It's been a little hectic here. I have 2 dogs that have been sick, and January was in and out of the ER a lot with one of them. And then February has been dealing with my older dog who has cancer. So I've been a little distracted, but I'm really happy that I've got the onions planted because we have like 12 pages of seeds to do this year. So we're going to start there. I'm going to get this tray completely finished with some more soil on top and get them spritzed and get myself cleaned up, and then we will move on to the next project. So here are the onions. They are under grow lights and they are also on a heat map. And as long as I keep them watered every day, we should start to see them sprout in about 7 days. Okay, back in the kitchen, we're gonna get going on some dog food. Usually I do that with chicken, sometimes with beef, sometimes with fish, but more often than not, it's chicken. I've been making dog food, gosh, almost 4 years now, since March of 2020 when dog food was hard to find. And when I started looking into, nutrients in dog food, it seems like a better choice to me, right? Kibble is so preserved. It is so over processed. It has a shelf life of about a year, but it has been, it's just crumbly bits. I just cannot imagine that there's a lot of nutrition in there. I do still give my dogs kibble every day, but I give them a homemade food for dinner. So, and that's really easy to do. Chicken is still really affordable where I am. I shop at a family grocery store chain here in upstate New York called Wegmans, and chicken is $1.99 a pound. It wasn't a couple years ago. It was up there about $3.69 a pound. Luckily, I had a ton of it freeze dried that I was able to rotate through. When I first started doing this, it was $1.69 a pound, and I don't think I'll ever see those prices again. But I'm okay with $1.99 a pound. It is actually still cheaper than buying dog food. So I am going to, I've got my pressure cooker, and I am going to put in I'm going to put water in up to the bottom of the trivet. It's a little bit higher than the trivet, but that's okay because I'm going to use all of that liquid. This is 6.5 pounds of chicken. I usually make sure that I use at least 6 pounds, and that will get me through. I've got Sky right here. That will usually get me through a week's worth of dinner for 4 dogs. I'm just going to load all the chicken breasts in there. So this is boneless, skinless chicken, and for the most part has the fat removed. I have to be careful with fat when it comes to Molly because of her chronic pancreatitis. Otherwise, I would add fat to their food like coconut oil, which is really healthy for both people and dogs. I do this every week, once a week. and I just keep it in my fridge. And like I said, I usually get six to seven servings with 6 pounds of chicken. I'm going to close the lid. Make sure that the vent on top is closed. And I can move this because it's not under pressure yet. And then I'm going to pressure cook this. And because it is defrosted, it's not frozen, I can just do it for 35 minutes. If it was frozen, I would do it for 45 minutes. Okay, while that is doing its thing, it's going to take a little bit of time for it to come up to pressure. Then it is going to cook for 35 minutes, and then there's going to be a pressure release period, which I let, for the most part, do naturally. I can speed it up a little bit at the end if I want to. But while that's doing its thing, we're going to move on to the Comfrey Salve. For the Comfrey Salve, what I did was filled a jar with comfrey leaves. This is a quart mason jar last fall before the plants died back. And then I just covered it with olive oil. And then I just let it sit in a dark spot in the corner on my counter, so out of direct sunlight. Probably did that in late November. And then in, I think, late January, I went ahead and I made 3 jars of this, but I didn't have enough jars to do all of this, so I just tucked it back in there. Now I ordered more jars so I can do it again. So the first step is going to be just straining that olive oil into this. So this is a little dipper crock pot. I think mostly sold probably for like fondue. I had 2 of these, so I kept one for food, and then this is for things like waxing cheeses or melting beeswax, which is what we're going to be doing for this. So I'm just going to start by straining it in there. I've just got a little fine mesh sieve here, and we're just going to let that drip. It is pretty potent because I did let it seep for quite a while. You don't have to let it seep that long. Probably 6 weeks would be enough. But we use it a lot here. I have a lot of pain related to some health issues, and as well as some family members. So this gets used a lot. In fact, the 3 jars that I just made, only one of them is still sealed or unused. So if this was enough oil to almost fill this up, I would use about 1.5 ounces of beeswax. So I'm just gonna squeeze out what I can. And I'm not gonna compost this, obviously, because it's got oil in it. Otherwise, it would be a great compost. Comfrey is so good for the soil. It's good for a lot of things, but not to be ingested. Comfrey is toxic to the liver. All right, I'm gonna wash my hand and we'll get going. I bought this box of beeswax a couple years ago. I've used it to make a lavender salve for headaches, and then of course the comfrey salve for aches and pains, bruises, anything topical that doesn't deal with broken skin. It really is a nice healer for. And this has lasted me quite a while. There is a lot of beeswax in here. There's 24 pieces, and usually I use 1.5 sticks for a full batch. And I'm gonna probably put a quarter. Since we're kind of full, I'm gonna see if I can do a quarter. Might have to cut it. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna plug this in, and it's gonna heat it up until the beeswax melts, and then I'll just keep stirring it up with this spoon that I keep for this project. And once it is completely mixed in, I'll unplug it, and then it has to cool down. I made that mistake last time. I didn't wait long enough for it to cool down, and it just melted my jar. So it's going to be a little bit. This is probably going to be 45 minutes total in heating up and mixing, and probably another 45 minutes to completely cool down before we can jar it up. So I will be sure to show you that, as well as the next step on the dog food as soon as we're ready. So I had a little bit of audio issue here. I'm just going to kind of talk you through what I'm doing. The chicken took probably close to an hour altogether. It had to come up to pressure, and then it cooked for 35 minutes. I did a 10-minute natural release, and then I went ahead and vented the Instapot to bring the pressure back down to 0. I used the trivet to lift the chicken out of the pot and put it into the dog food bowl, and I'm actually just using the tongs to shred it. I don't worry about shredding it into tiny pieces. The dogs actually enjoy if they have a little bit of a bigger bite to their meal. So just kind of doing a rough chop here. And then I will push all of that chicken into one side of the bowl so that I leave room for the vegetables that are going to be going in. Moving on to the next step, it is time to cook the rice and to add the vegetables to the bowl. So first I'm going to pour off about 2.5 cups of the broth, and I'm going to reserve that to cook the rice in. I'll leave the rest of the broth in the pot while I put the vegetables into the dog food. So I start off with some ground flaxseed, and then I add some nutritional yeast, and that's about 1/4 cup of each. Then I'm going to add some butternut squash powder that's left over from the garden last year. It adds a really nice flavor to the food as well as a lot of nutrition. So that's probably about 1/4 cup or so. Then I'm going to add some green beans. This is green beans that I got from frozen from Azure Standard and freeze-dried. All of this food is freeze-dried. Peas are next, and the beans and the peas I add probably 1/2 cup to a full cup each of those. I don't really measure, I just eyeball it. And then finally I add some carrots. And the vegetables that I add each week might vary, just depending on what I have and what I think the dogs might be in the mood for. Once the dry goods are in the bowl, I am going to add the rest of the chicken broth from the pot. I just pour it right over the top of the vegetables, and then I stir it really well to make sure that everything is in the liquid. Freeze-dried food reconstitutes very quickly, so it doesn't take long for them to sync up with the rest of the food. And now it's time for me to get cooking the rice. So I am going to pour that 2 cups of chicken broth into the Instapot, and then add 2 cups of rice to that same measuring bowl. And then I'll just use the tongs that I already have dirtied to kind of scrape that measuring cup out, make sure that everything gets into the pot, and then I'll stir that up really, really well, making sure that everything is under liquid. And I don't use rice every week. Sometimes it's barley, sometimes it's millet, sometimes it's quinoa. But the go-to is rice because I do have a lot of that on hand and the dogs really enjoy it. I'm going to set that for 6 minutes, and it will cook for 6 minutes, and then do about a 10-minute natural release, and then I'll just release it the rest of the way. Over here, I'm just stirring up the vegetables into the chicken, just making sure that everything is well combined. And then I will just put a lid on that, and I'll end up setting that aside until the rice is done. Here we have the comfrey. It is the beeswax have melted down, and now I just need to let this cool for about 45 minutes before moving on to the next step. Our rice is done, and I've got 4 dogs in here ready to eat. For this, I will use an oven mitt and a spoon. So that only took like 2 minutes since I had already used it. It was still pretty hot. It came up to pressure really quick. 6-minute cook time, 10-minute natural release. So not long. It's 6:35. They're hungry. I am just going to mix that all in. There's still quite a bit. I mean, it's not soupy, but there's still quite a bit of liquid in here, which the rice will continue to absorb. This looks really good. It always looks really good. It is people quality dog food. I used to freeze dry this and then just mix it with water and have it ready to go. But, you know, since I make it every week, I feed this to them every day, I don't need to freeze dry it. All right, let me bring you in for a close-up look here. So in here, again, we have flaxseed, which is really high in fiber, and as well as omega-3s, really good for digestive health. We also added nutritional yeast, which is just packed full of your B vitamins, B12, B1, B2, B3, B6, and B9. Vitamin B is really protective of your DNA, helps regulate your metabolism, as well as boost your immunity. The winter squash packed a whopping 59% of human daily value vitamin A, so antioxidants right there, as well as C and E. They have also special carbs in them that have both anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. The green beans are an excellent source of protein, as well as more CA, adding K, thiamine, more B6, and again E. It also contains calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, and potassium. So overall, just a really healthy additive. The peas are carbs and protein, fiber, A, K, and C. So again, lots of antioxidants. The protein content in peas is 80 grams per half a cup. So that is a true protein boost in their food. And then the carrots, they added a pectin type of fiber, both soluble and insoluble fiber, which overall just helps with their total digestion. So really, really healthy food for the dogs. And they enjoy it. They absolutely love it. And I am actually going to show you that here in just a minute. And there you have it. Even though it's still a little bit warm, we've got 4 dogs chowing down. So here is Sky. She has been with me for 4 years now. She was a rescue from a local rescue service called Helping Hounds, where they go through and sweep through kill shelters in the South and give them to foster families. And if they are adoptable, they put them on a semi-truck, ship them up north here where they get adopted really quickly. This is little Molly. Molly is 9. She is my epileptic, pancreatic problem, and now hypoparathyroidism dog. She's on a ton of meds, but she's doing really great. She has really bounced back from her last episode and stay at the ER. This is Mr. Charlie Brown. No, Charlie Brown. He is 10, has no health issues, although he did have a tumor removed last summer. It was benign. And this is my lovely Lex. Lex is 12. Hi, sweet girl. And she has nasal cancer. She's being treated at Cornell. But that's the fur fam. All right, well, we're almost done with our chores for the day. We just have to finish with the comfrey. So this is cooled down. It's probably been an hour and a half, just like I said. So it took about an hour, about 45 minutes for the beeswax to melt, and then another 45 minutes for it to be cool enough to pour into these little amber plastic vials to where they won't melt as you pour it in. Learn from my mistakes. So I'm gonna try to just pour this in. Oh, good, that's working. I am spilling a little, and I will get quite a bit actually. Ooh. All right, that's a mess I'm gonna have to clean up, including my forehead. These are gonna cool down and harden into a salve. They're very liquidy right now, but I do have one left over from the one I did in January. So as you can see, it is a solid balm. It's very soft. It's very moisturizing, very smooth. And again, just a tremendous healer for any non-broken skin pain or inflammation that you might have. So if you are not planning or you don't currently have comfrey in your garden, might I recommend that you find a spot to grow some. As I was editing this video, I realized it had been 6 days, so I came in to check on all of the babies here. These are the onions that we planted 6 days ago, and they are sprouting really, really well. So I'm gonna see if I can bring you in to show you that. I don't know if you can see or not, but we have little green sprouts just all over the trays. So I am really pleased with that. I didn't expect to see them quite so soon. They actually started popping up. I don't know if you can see, but there's little green everywhere. I was expecting them to take maybe 10 days, but we had germination in about 4. And that's going to do it for this week here at ABC Homestead. Thank you so much for joining me, and I do hope that you come back again soon.